Welcome back to Sew Denim Quilting. I'm Glenda Burton, and we're continuing on our adventure of making our scrappy tile quilt blocks into a quilt. We started with just the blocks. We made our blocks first. Then we sandwiched them and quilted the blocks individually. Then we connected them in groups of two. And then we connected the groups of two into groups of four. And today we're gonna continue our, I got these backwards. And today we're gonna continue assembling our quilt, and we're gonna assemble our groups of our blocks, each block of four, into a row, two rows basically, but one row of 8. And then from there, we'll join our last row. We have one row that's going to be by itself that we'll join on the bottom. So today, I'm going to continue just like I was before. I'm going to go ahead. Let me get the rest of these out of my way. All right. So we're going to do like we did before. Make sure they're going the right direction. And then we're going to go ahead and fold back the back like we did before. And this, it'll take a little bit longer this time now because my rows are getting, my blocks are getting bigger. You could, if you wanted to not assemble each individual 10-inch block and quilt each one like we did before, you could assemble them in rows across like this. You could make one long row, or you could assemble the groups of 4. So these 4 together, and then sandwich your blocks and quilt them and just join them together that way. I'm showing it this way just so that you can see how it goes together block by block. But you don't have to do it block by block. You can make your blocks bigger so there's less joining of seams. So you can do it in quadrants, or you can do it in rows, or you can do it in columns. It doesn't really matter. This is a good way to get good practice to practice your sewing skills, but it can be frustrating. I actually like bigger blocks, but this isn't bad. I don't mind the hand sewing. It's actually been kind of nice. And sometimes instead of hand sewing, I do stitch it down with a sewing machine, but for this pattern, it works much better to hand stitch it. And as you can tell, I just sewed within a 1/2 inch the edge so that I can go ahead and fold it back. And it gives me a 1/2 inch when I'm joining, a little bit more wiggle room. Because this is kind of bulky, so the 1/2 inch gives you a little bit more room in between as you're stitching it together. You can leave more than that if you want, but you can free motion quilt them, or you can straight line quilt them. Once I'm done pinning them together, pinning this back, I will connect them together like we've done for the other steps. It's just basically building upon your foundation of one block. Then it becomes 2 blocks, and then it becomes 4 blocks, and then it becomes 8 blocks. And then it'll become our rows, and then I'll do the same thing with the rows. I like to start in the middle. And I'm poking it into the seam on this side and then into the seam on this side. Seam to seam. And I learned this from Kimberly Jolly, a Fat Quarter Shop. This is a method that she uses, and she calls it poke-a-pin. Poke-a-seam, poke-a-pin, whatever. I'm going to finish attaching this, and then I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Alright, we're back at the sewing machine, and we have our two quadrants together. And as you can see, it's moving out. By doing it this way, we don't have the bulk underneath our sewing machine. We're just sewing these together now, and they are to our left instead of our right underneath of here. So it makes it much easier than trying to wrestle our sewing machine with our sewing machine in our tiny little throat space. Gotta find my pedal. I lost my pedal down here. All right. Just adjust as we go. I'm just guiding it through. Continually readjusting as I go so that it feeds through evenly. All right, I'm back from the ironing board, and basically what I did is I went and I laid down one side in whatever direction this was my seam was going. I laid down the bottom one, and then I added the top, laid down the top one, and I just ironed it down to make it flatter. And I went ahead and rolled over my 1/4 of an inch or so that I could sew down my strip. And I'm going to put in, and I put my pins in to hold it in place so that they don't move. And we're going to ladder stitch this seam just like we did our other seams. Yes, and it's a little bumpy because it's the denim, so it's a little bulky, but that's okay. It's to be expected. Okay, and I've got my thread, which I've doubled, and tied a knot on the end. And I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm not going to sew down as before. I'm not going to sew down I'm not going to sew all the way to the end and catch the batting. I'm going to just start on the top here so that we have our 1/2 inch when we go to sew this together to our other row. So basically I'm just gonna tuck it in. And then I'm just gonna knot it off best I can. You can't really see what I'm doing either. I'm just poking it in there. Oops. Don't catch the batting there. Just knot it off. And I'm just going to start my ladder stitch just like I did before. I start in the fold just because it hides my string a little bit better. So there's our first one, and we're just going to go directly across from it, making sure we don't catch the batting just yet. And I'm going to go back in directly across from where I came out at, in the fold of my seam, and in my fold. And just back and forth all the way to the end, and then I'm going to, when I get to the bottom, I'm going to make sure that I don't sew it down to the batting when I get to the bottom, because I want to be able to connect it to my next, connect the rows when, so that our rows are connected. So back and forth. And I'll come back and show you the finished seam when we're done. Okay, I'm now to the end of it, where I have my 1/2 inch, it's unsewn for connecting, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew to the end, but I'm not going to sew into my into the backing, sew into my batting. So I'm just going to continue sewing down to the end, and then I'll just tie a little knot in the end and we'll call it good. It'll be caught in the next seam anyway, so. I just went between the, there we go. Just gonna tie a little knot in here, back side. Double knot it and be done. And there we go, all tied off. All right, we have our 2 pieces. We have our rows that we've made, where we went with 1 block to 2 blocks to 4 blocks to 8 blocks, and we have, I've already added the extra strip that I had, and I'm going to add these. I'm going to connect these two the same way I connected the bottom, which is to flip these back over and, well, get this closer so I can see what I'm doing. So basically, I'm going to do just like I've done in the past when we did 1 to 2, then 2 to 4, and so forth. I'm just going to peel these back And I'm going to go ahead and pin it back so that we reveal our top seam, the top of our quilt blocks, which is now a row of 8, a row of 8. And we're just going to go ahead and we're going to pin down just like we've done before on both sides. Side. This side. Flip it over. And pin it down just like I did the other one. Pin them together. We've been doing in the past. I like to start in the middle and work each side. I'm just going to line them up in the middle and poke it in to the seam. And line the seams up. And then I'll work down each side. you're back at the sewing machine. All right. Again, now that we have it all sewed or all pinned down, we're going to use the ladder stitch to sew it down so that it's a hidden stitch. And so basically we go in across from where we came out at. So we're going in. Okay, right there we went. That's where it came out. And we're going to go in right next to it. And then I'm just using 50 weight thread, doubled, and the sharp needle that I can see the thread. So we came out there. Now we're going to go in right across from it. And out. And that's all we're going to do, back and forth, all the way to the end. And then we'll tie it off and we'll be done. Thanks for watching. If you like today's episode, hit that subscribe button. Like and share so you don't miss what's coming up next. Still to come on this one is Borders and Binding. See you in the next video.